This is reality and revelation. No filter, just truth. What's really going on for me and you? Not here to condemn, we're here to unfold the story behind the story untold. Open your eyes, let the light break through. Reality and revelation made for you.
Hey everybody, we want to welcome you to the inaugural episode of Reality and Revelation Podcast. I am your host, Rick Peterson, and I'm excited that you've decided to pull up a chair and join me today in this brand new season that we are starting, where we are going to talk about some things that are going to hopefully inspire us to do better, to be better, to grow better, to love better, but most of all, to live better. So now that you've decided to join in and you've pulled up a chair, you're probably wondering, what is Rick going to talk about today? I'm glad you asked, because the one thing I want to talk about today is something that is near and near my heart, because it touches everybody I know. Doesn't matter if they are millionaires, doesn't matter if they are people who are struggling. And I want to talk about a word that you've heard a lot, all in the news, all in politics, all in everywhere else. And that word is affordability. And I know for many of you, depending on what your economic status is and where you are, affordability may be something that you struggle with, maybe something that is impacting you, maybe something that literally governs the day-to-day lives of what you do. And for some of you, you're like, hey, I'm in a good financial space and I'm not really dealing with affordability, and I'm not really dealing with the struggles that some other people are, because you are blessed and highly favored, and you are somebody that God has opened doors for. You are in a great space. But when it comes to affordability, I want to kind of walk through the term that you keep hearing, because for a lot of us, we hear affordability and we don't think about it on a global scale. We think about it for ourselves. What can I afford? What can I afford to do? What can I afford to buy? Where can I afford to go? And I want to just kind of back it out with some statistics for a second, because I want to make sure we are all on the same page with some of the outrage that this word triggers. Because depending on what side of the aisle you're on, whether you are red or you're blue, whether you're a Democrat or whether you're a Democrat or Republican, whether you're a donkey or an elephant, this word has been thrust into the national spotlight, because people like you and I, everyday people who work, who strive for better things, who want to provide for their families, who want to make sure they're financially secure and their futures are taken care of, their children are good spaces. We are constantly being barraged with a series of choices that are microtransactions that end up turning into larger transactions. So you might say to me, Rick, what do you mean by microtransaction? I want you to understand that a microtransaction is a small thing, that Uber ride that you take, that DoorDash that you buy, that if you are a video gamer, some of the things that you purchase for your video game so that you can have a better character or have a better experience in the game. Those are microtransactions, and those microtransactions always start off as small. $1 here, $2 there, $5 here, $10 there. And those microtransactions over time grow to something that, when you stop and look at it, are more expensive than you ever thought. Think about your Netflix subscription. It didn't start off where it is today. Think about your Hulu subscription. It didn't start off where it is today. Think about your Amazon Prime or any other subscription that you have. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to let you know that you, by having a subscription, are part of the microtransaction community, because every month, like clockwork, somebody gets to take money from you that you don't think about. They take it from you on your debit card or your credit card or your checking account or wherever it might be, because you want the convenience of having what you want to have at your fingertips. And what people have done is they've taken the psychology behind the microtransaction, the psychology of, if it's small enough, they won't miss it and they won't question it. If it's small enough, they won't bother to cancel it because, well, it's only $5 or it's only $10. So ain't nobody worried about that $10 bill. And what they're doing is they're slowly, gradually, over time, taking more and more money out of your paycheck and out of your home, and you aren't making any changes. So I just want to kind of run through some numbers for a second, because for most of you that know me, you know that I'm a numbers guy. You know that I'm somebody that loves finance, loves economics, loves statistics. So I just want to kind of walk you through some things just for a second, because I want you to realize how things have changed. In 2006, the average apartment cost $782 a month. Average apartment, $782 a month in 2006. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to understand that right now, with the changes in housing that we are dealing with, the average apartment is $1,698. Same amount of square footage, same carpet. Just because they updated some backsplash and gave you subway tile, or they took out the shag carpet and they gave you fake hardwood floors, doesn't mean that they can take your same housing from $700 to almost $1,700. But you say, well, Rick, I don't have any choice. I got to live somewhere. What am I supposed to do? Let's talk about the average wage for just a second in that same time frame. Because, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to understand that your wages are not keeping up with the expenses that we are being given. So again, we're going to start looking at it in 2007. 2007, the median income in 2007 nationally was $40,405. Again, $40,405. Now, we talked about the apartment has more than doubled in that time frame, but I want you to realize that your income has not, because the average employer gives you somewhere between a 2 to 4% raise annually. So while the apartment that was just over $700 is now just under $1,700, the average median income from 2007, where it was $40,405, has only gone up to $69,846, which means you have gotten approximately a 50% income increase in income, but you have already received over a 100% increase in housing, which means your income is not keeping up with housing. And some of you might be like, well, Rick, that's just housing. That doesn't mean that it has to do with anything else. Okay, let's talk about home ownership, because who doesn't want to own a home? Who doesn't want what some people call the American dream? The white picket fence, the driveway, the garage, the pool in the back, if you're fortunate enough to have one of those, the 3 bedrooms, the 2 bathrooms, and all of the accoutrements and amenities that come with home ownership. So some of you were saying, well, that's just apartment living. I'm not in an apartment. I own my home. So let's talk about home ownership for just a second, because I want you to realize that home ownership has changed in that same time frame as well. And you will be astonished at the fact that to learn that in 2007, your average house was $299,600. Your average home, $299,600. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to understand that today your average home is close to $500,000. $500,000 for your average home nationally, which means that, again, your $40,000 to $69,000 income hasn't kept up with the fact that housing has gone from $300,000 to $500,000, which is almost a 100% increase. It's the same way for groceries. It's the same way for vehicles. It's the same way for dating. It's the same way for nights out. It's the same way for entertainment. Do you know you can travel to Tokyo, Japan for cheaper than you can go to Disney for a week? Do you know that you can go to many high-end destinations for less than you can to go to Disneyland or Disney World? Which means that for some of the things that used to be easily accessible for people like you and me, some of the things that we used to be able to do without a blink, some of the things that we didn't have to think twice about doing. Do you know now we have people who are making real life decisions on what they want to do? Do I want to eat or do I want to live? Do I want to go out or am I going to eat in? And the one thing that nobody has told you, because everybody has told you, well, just get a better job. Go to school and get an education, or go get a trade and do something. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to understand that more millionaires are coming from entrepreneurial ventures than they are from anything else. While I'm not discouraging school, while I'm not discouraging education, because I am somebody who is in school right now. While I'm not discouraging you to go get that technical degree, or while I'm not discouraging you from doing anything else, I want you to understand that for you to obtain the affordability that you want to have, you are not going to be able to rely on anybody else. You're not going to be able to rely on government, because at 51, I don't know if Social Security is going to be around by the time I get to that age. And they keep pushing that age out. I'm not going to be able to rely on my employer increasing my salary at the same rate that the things that I love to do or the things that I want to have are increasing. It's not about driving a Lexus or a Mercedes or a BMW or a Range Rover. It's about being able to afford a basic new car or being able to afford a pre-owned vehicle. It's about being able to not just get the apartment and put the down payment and the first month's rent, but making sure you can do that while buying groceries, making sure you can send your child to college and not have them assume massive debt. It's about making sure that you can do and take the vacation that you have always dreamed about, the places that you always wanted to go. And you might be saying to myself, okay, Rick, that's the reality. What's the revelation? Because you have heard of the podcasts about finances and they tell you how to snowball pay down your debt, how to pay off the smallest thing and then take that money and put it on the next biggest thing and move your debt forward. But here's the thing, for some people, that's not possible because you have more debt than you have income. And you are living not because you want to, but because you have to. You are living paycheck to paycheck. The old adage says that most of us are just 2 or 3 missed paychecks away from bankruptcy. Ladies and gentlemen, I will tell you today, as we record this podcast, there are more people who are having their vehicle repossessed today than since the financial crisis in 2008. Home foreclosures are at an all-time high because people are getting into homes that they cannot afford to maintain. Which means that as we start to talk about affordability and we start to talk about what we can do to take what we have been given and make it multiply, to take what we've been given and ask God to open up the windows of heaven and pour down blessings that we don't have room enough to receive, because that's what we love to say in church. It's not about praying and waiting on God to perform a miracle. It's about making sure we, those who are blessed to be able to work and earn, are doing absolutely everything we can to maximize what we can do to have better, to do better, to live better, and to enjoy life the way it is. So how do we do that? How do I take the little bit that I've been given and how do I multiply it so that I can make it what I want it to be? Rick, you explained to me how I can take my $42,000 a year salary and I can afford that 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house. You tell me how I can take my $51,000 a year salary and I can afford to take that vacation that my wife or my husband so desperately deserves. You tell me how I can take my $100,000 a year salary, because there are some that are making 6 figures and are still struggling paycheck to paycheck. Because the more you earn, the more you spend. You tell me, Rick, how I'm supposed to do this and how I'm supposed to be able to afford the housing and how I'm supposed to be able to afford the car and how I'm supposed to be able to afford the food and how I'm supposed to be able to afford at least some form of entertainment. Because you started off talking about microtransactions and how my money is being slowly sucked out of me, pennies here, dollars there. So you tell me, Rick, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to make it? How am I supposed to take the little bit that I have and turn it into a livable, sustainable way? I will tell each and every one of us that is watching this podcast, and those of you that have shared, those of you that have liked, those of you that subscribe so that you don't miss an episode, I want you to share this with somebody that you think this might be impactful to, because one of the things that we can do to make sure we are in control of our affordability is to take control of our income. We've got to make sure that we are the trailblazers. We've got to make sure that we are the ones that are setting the trend and setting the path. We've got to make sure that we are the ones that are guiding our own ship. And while I am grateful for my corporate employment, while I'm grateful for the dollars that it brings me and the benefits that I have, while I'm grateful for the church that I serve and all that they do for their pastor because they love him and First Lady tremendously, while I'm grateful for everything else, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, I am a workaholic. I am somebody that is going to make sure I am not just doing enough, but I'm going to make sure that I'm doing everything I can to make sure that not only is my today secure, my tomorrow is secure. So for those of you that are saying, how do I do this affordability thing? What can I do? Rick, you give me a blueprint that I haven't heard before. You tell me a strategy that hasn't already been implemented. You reveal some sort of revelation because you say your podcast is reality and revelation. You give me the revelation that nobody else has. Here's the number one thing I'm going to tell you to do. I'm going to tell you to invest in you. You might want to put that in the chat or in the comment so that somebody else who watches this later understands that the number one thing that you can do is you can invest in you. Well, Rick, I don't have any money to invest in me. You absolutely have money to invest in you because you invest in Netflix. You absolutely have money to invest in you because you invest in Amazon Prime. You absolutely have money to invest in you because you invest in Starbucks. You absolutely have money to invest in you because you invest in making sure you getting them bundles. You invest in making sure you getting your toes and your nails done. So you have money to invest in you, but the problem for most of us is we are not willing to make some of the sacrifices and redistribute that money back into us so that we can fund the vision, the dream, and the goals that we have for ourselves. Most of us are waiting on somebody else to do for us what we can begin to lay the foundation to do for ourselves. Well, Rick, how am I supposed to do that? First of all, you've got to know what your vision is for yourself. And it's not about pie in the sky. It's not about you want to be the president of the United States. It's not about you want to be the CEO or you want to be, but you've got to know, number one, what is your skill set? What is your superpower? Well, you might say to me, you don't have one. And baby, I'm gonna tell you, God didn't make you without making you special, which means there is something about you. There is something about the skill set that you have. There is something about the ideologies that you hold. There is something about the drive that is on the inside of you. There is something about the passion that you have that is absolutely monetizable. And not only is it monetizable, but it is actually something that you can build a brand from that will not just take care of you, but it will take care of everything that you have ever envisioned. But the first investment you've got to make is you've got to make an investment in yourself, which means you may have to make some micro sacrifices. Because we talked about micro transactions, you might have to make some micro sacrifice, which means, hey, maybe we cut off Netflix. Maybe we cut off Amazon Prime. Maybe we don't go to Starbucks every day. Maybe we go to Starbucks once a week. Maybe we get some K-cups and we make coffee at the house. Maybe instead of going out for that steak, we buy some steak and we put it in the air fryer, we cook it at home. Whatever the micro transactional changes that you can make, you have to start to begin to see yourself as investable. I need somebody to put in comments, I'm worth it. I need somebody to put in the comments, I'm worth it. You've got to see yourself as investable, because if you're not willing to invest in you, why would somebody else? If you don't see your dream as fundable, if you don't see your passion as something that is worth investing in, why would somebody else? And there are too many of you watching this podcast right now. There are too many of you listening to this podcast on Spotify or wherever you get your podcast that you know what your thing is. You unequivocally, without a shadow of a doubt, know exactly what your thing is. And the problem that you have had for far too long is not only do you not think it's possible, but you have listened to people that told you there's no way that's going to work. Baby, let me get you to understand that it's going to work if you're willing to work it. Let me say that one more time for the people in the back that might not have been paying close attention. It's going to work if you work it, which means that you have got to invest in you. Is your rent going up? Absolutely. Is the price of your groceries through the roof? Sky high. Is the cost of car maintenance and owning a vehicle something that straps you down every day? Yep. But I guarantee you that if you sit down and you look over your finances, I guarantee you that if you sit down and evaluate where your money is going, I guarantee you if you sit down and you really do a deep dive into what's necessary and what's optional, you will find that you have money that you can reallocate to your dream and your vision. You have resource that you can pour back into you. And you might say, well, Rick, I've got the idea, but I don't know where to get started. I know exactly what it is I want to do. I've got the vision. I've got it all laid out in my mind, and I know exactly what it is, but I don't have the resources or the infrastructure or the friends or the connections or the hookups to get started. Do you know how many people started off by selling T-shirts in the back of out of the back of a trunk? Damon, the founder of FUBU, was somebody who started off by selling shirts out of the back of a trunk. Many rappers started out selling mixtapes out of their own vehicle. They didn't have a label, they didn't have promotion, they didn't have distribution. They had heart and hustle. And for too many of us, the reason why our dreams are not funded, the reason why we are not in the spaces and places that we want to be, the reason why we have not attained the goals that we have set out for ourselves back when we were teens and in our 20s, when we said we were going to go to school and get the degree, and we were going to have the house, and we were going to have the car, we were going to take the vacations, and we were going to live out the way, is because we have prioritized what we feel like we have to do over what we want to do. Now, I want you to understand that if you are going to fund your dream, you're going to also have to fund your sacrifices. I want you to understand that if you are going to fund your dream, you are also going to have to fund your sacrifices, which means when everybody else is out doing what they want to do, you're going to have your nose to the grindstone, making sure that you are driving yourself beyond repair. You're going to have to be the person that is pushing you when nobody else are. When you don't have another cheerleader, you're going to have to cheerlead yourself. David said it this way in the Bible. David said he had to encourage himself. Too many of us are waiting for somebody else to validate what it is we want to do. Too many of us are waiting on somebody else to tell us, go on ahead, you got it. This podcast was supposed to have happened years ago. Why didn't it happen? Because I was waiting on other people to do what I always had a passion to do. My best friend and I were going to do a sports podcast years ago, well before podcasting was monetizable and lucrative. We talked about doing a podcast called The Shut 'Em Down Show. We was going to talk about nothing but sports. And we had great sports takes, and it was going to be amazing. And life got in the way for both of us. And well, this happened on his side, and this happened on my side, and The Shut 'Em Down Show never happened. Talked about doing another podcast with a dear friend of mine, and we had it all laid out. And things happened on both sides of the aisle, and that podcast never happened. Not because of anything somebody did wrong, but because we never pushed past the barriers that were impeding our lives to say, you know what, this is what I'm going to do. So today, in this inaugural, and this initial, and this brand new, in this first of podcast series, I'm kicking myself because I should have did this years ago. I should have been in this studio in front of this microphone with this lighting and this camera years ago. And instead of having a first episode, we would have been having episode number 100 or episode number 1000. We would have had banners and streamers and lights and everything else to celebrate the milestone that we achieved. But I wasn't willing to bet on myself. I wasn't willing to take the money that I was spending on Mercedes and the money that I was spending on BMW. I wasn't willing to take the money that I was spending on going out to eat. I wasn't willing to take the money that I was spending on haircuts when I had hair. I wasn't willing to take the money that I was spending on designer suits and on other people and actually put it back into me so that I could be the captain of my own ship. And here's the great thing about that story. I'm not the only one, because there are some of you watching right now that are the exact same way. People have been eating your food your whole life and telling you you should open a restaurant. You have been taking photos your entire life because you love photography, and people are saying you should be a photographer. You have been counseling people your entire life because there is something on your forehead that says, talk to me. And people have been coming to you for wisdom and for guidance and for advice your entire life. Yet and still, you never took the steps to actually get a real doctorate degree from an actual university and go ahead and start that business that God put on the inside of you from the very beginning. So the reality is, don't be mad at somebody else. The revelation is, don't be angry with the system. Don't be mad at the man. Don't feel like people don't know your worth. Because, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to understand that the person that needs to know your worth is the person that's sitting in front of the camera. The person that needs to know your worth is the reflection in the phone or the device where you are watching this podcast, because that is the person that once they realize just how much you are worth, once they understand just how prominent and how powerful and how lucrative and how amazing you are, you will start to blow the doors off everything that has held you back your entire life. Because you won't let circumstance, you won't let situation, you won't let people, you won't let proximity, you won't let anything stop you from doing what it is you know you were supposed to do. So as we close this segment on affordability, I'm going to ask you to afford yourself. I'm going to ask you to believe in your dream. I'm going to ask you not just to have a hustle, because everybody wants to have a side hustle. You need to have a main hustle. And that main hustle doesn't need to be Uber. It doesn't need to be Lyft. It doesn't need to be Postmark. It doesn't need to be anything else. That main hustle needs to be you. Because until you start pouring into you what other people aren't, you are always going to be bitter, angry, and upset about what could have been, instead of actually grabbing what is in front of you. So the affordability conversation is more about not what somebody else can do for you, not what laws can be passed or what arguments are happening in Congress or in the Senate or at the president's desk, not anything else. But the affordability conversation really starts with you. And what are you willing to afford yourself so that you can have, be, go, and live like you want to live? So in closing, as we've talked about affordability, I just want to kind of bring in this one passage that is inspired to me. It says, where you sow, you'll also reap. So for you that is sowing into everything and everybody else, you're watching other people flourish and thrive and live the lives and do the things that you want to do. I want you to kind of look inwardly for just a second and actually start to see where and how you can sow into you, so that the affordability that you want to have, whether it's mental, emotional, psychological, physical, spiritual, whatever that affordability is, you can get to the space where you can not just afford to live, but you can afford to thrive, and you can afford to grow, and you can afford to do all of the things that you want to do. But you got to start with that seed. And in church, we always love to say at offering time, we want you to plant your seed into the household of God. Today, I want you to plant your seed in your house, because it's got to fall on good ground. And the ground that you are, the person that you are, the mind that you have, the ambition that you have, the drive that you have is unmatched by anybody else. But what is it going to take for you to get started? What is it going to take for you to make that first investment? Just like lifting weights or running, the first day is always the hardest. It's always the slowest. It's always the day that hurts the most. It's always the day that after you do it once, you're like, I don't want to do that again because it hurts so bad. It's the same way with affordability. Making those sacrifices to invest in you is going to hurt something else. But you got to look long term, not short term. You got to look at the bigger picture, not the micro picture, not the micro transaction, but the 30,000 foot view. And once you can realize and understand that not only are you investable, not only are you worth it, not only do you have an amazing idea, not only are you going to have all of the strategies and people around you that are going to help make your dream possible, then you will realize not only are you investable, but you are worth it. Your time is worth it. Your energy is worth it. Your effort is worth it. And most of all, when you start to see that first gain from your investment, it'll be one of the proudest days of your life, because you will see the fruit of your labor. And ladies and gentlemen, I want you to know, as we close this inaugural episode of the Reality and Revelation podcast, I want you to know that there is something on the other side. It is better than where you are now. But to get to that other side, you're going to have to take some steps. You're going to have to walk a journey. You're going to have to believe that there is something that is there that is waiting on you. And then you are going to have the drive, the commitment, the passion, and the focus to start to take those small steps one at a time. So before you leave this podcast, I want you to just write in the comments, I'm going to take that step. I'm going to make that move. I'm going to step out on that vision. I'm going to do what it is I said I always wanted to do. Because when you look back on this a year from now, or when you look back on this 6 months from now, or when you look back from this 2 years from now, you're going to say it all started with the Reality and Revelation podcast. And I'm so glad that I tuned in. And listen, I am glad that you tuned in as well. You can find us everywhere you find podcasts. You can find us. And if you are watching this podcast, I want you to like, subscribe, share, so that you never miss an episode of what's coming, and so that you can be a part of the revelation that